Well, thank you for having me here, Jared. It's amazing, these conferences. I mean, this is the first time I've been here, but the stuff you've put together is just tremendous. It's so neat to see people I've never met before, firstly, but also see a bunch of people that I was talking with Max that we had met first in 2007 in Iowa at USAR, but a whole bunch of people, Mark at DC. It's just kind of, this community is awesome because it continues to get bigger, and it's just the same people are also sticking around. It's a blast. So again, yes, my name's Jeff Ryan. I've written at least a few packages over the years. Actually, I have no idea where the clicker is either. Oh, yeah. So the first thing is that every one of my like 40 other talks I've ever given are all technical. This one is not technical. So we are either going to end under time or over time, and I apologize for that. So kind of brief history on me. Again, Jeff Ryan. I kind of think of myself as principally a developer. Like I like writing code. I like solving problems, and I don't have any training in computer science. I've never taken a computer science class, which probably shocks a lot of people who use my software in industry, but it seems to work. And for my current role, I actually work as a data scientist quant for Citadel Investments in Chicago, which is a very large hedge fund. I work on a quant desk and been there for 5 years. Also, as a shameless plug, we are always looking for super smart data science people, especially my group. So anybody who's interested, there's me and there's also someone else here who might be interested in talking to you. So hit me up on that. And then the last part is this artist thing, which is funny because I'm not really an artist, not a visual artist. But what I like is that the stuff that I think of art as like creating something that's not been there before and kind of gets people to either think or kind of makes a mark somehow. And software, I'm good at software, or sort of good at software. So I kind of count that as art. And I also like art, but that's secondary. And then the art finance thing. So Jared pointed out it's a conference, but to me it's far more than a conference. Conference is this manifestation of kind of a whole bunch of ideas that were bouncing around. I started writing QuantMod when I was trading myself. I needed some visualization tool, and at the time in R, the only way to see two time series together were to literally take two windows, like X11 windows, and drag them together and try and align them. So it's pretty disastrous. And then I did try ggplot, which was brand new at the time, so it's no harm to ggplot. But it took so long to draw anything. It was surreal. And again, this is 12 years ago. But I remember going to get coffee and watching the little bars print, and then coming back, and they were still printing. So I had to write something just to work. So that's where QuantMod was born, in my basement, effectively, with a coworker. And then XDS kind of came out of that. But the conference is, like I say, it comes after this need that I had, and it turned out a whole bunch of other people in Chicago that I ran into who all also started writing packages, like Dirk Gadebutel and the performance analytics guys, Brian Peterson, Peter Carl, and then Josh Ulrich, who is now the maintainer of QuantMod and XDS. He was co-author of XDS as well. But this kind of weird group of people that were all nearby, and we kind of got together and realized that maybe there's more if we work together. So it's not that different than the Tidyverse. But we just have like a different mindset. And we're not prescriptive per se. We collaborate and argue back and forth, and we try and make things work together, and I think we do a pretty good job. But we try to build this universe of like things, this community. And the last part with this kind of this ecosystem, which is getting at, there are a bunch of packages within the R finance space that do sort of what you want. And the weird part about finance, if anybody works in finance, is that you really don't care all that much about making code that lasts. When on the outside, I did, because I just wanted to be able to use it forever. But most of the time, you're fighting against the market, and it's a really tough business to win in. So really getting things done, and if they work, you never want to touch them again. So there'll be a part of this talk that touches on that. But we just need stuff that worked. So that's it. And the success thing is kind of goofy. So again, it's the first time I've ever given this talk. But success to me is not like some sort of monetary success or anything like that. It's that this stuff seems to have gotten kind of a life of its own and continues to get bigger. And obviously, this is giant, but like the R finance space has gotten giant. We're now in our 10th year of the conference. We have 300 people capped. By the way, I will also point out that I don't come to New York very often, but it's remarkable how many people you guys can squeeze in little rooms. Okay, I'll move on. So success is kind of this bigger picture thing. Oh wait, why does that not go? There we go. Okay, I've got like 4 pieces of this talk. Okay, I'm gonna keep on track. And they kind of are broken down to like motivation, kind of responsibility, a community component, and kind of a marketing component. Those are my MBA words. I don't have an MBA, but I do think MBAs are good. If Jared, I think, attests to that. Yeah, okay. So first thing, you are not alone. I live in the city. I am told these are stars that you can see, but it's a big world. And even though you're just one person, it's probably more than you. The first bullet here is kind of funny because at our very first conference in Chicago, there was this R-metrics suite of tools that was written by this awesome guy who passed away 2 years ago. But it was called R-metrics, and he built this incredible suite of software that was basically pegged off of S+'s fin metrics. But he wanted to be able to teach his students with S+, but couldn't afford it for all his students. And so he decided, because R was coming about, he decided to make a version, like a clone of S+ fin metrics in R. But he came to the conference, and he was like, I idolized him, mentor. I convinced him to come to Chicago. And he gets on stage and expect a great talk, and he gave a great talk. But at one point, he stopped, and he's like, I write software for me, not you. And it was like, okay, that was great. But his point was he's writing for his own purpose. Like he really wanted to make the software work for him. It was not to be, he didn't care about sharing. I mean, he cared about sharing it, but it was only really because he needed his students to use it, and he liked that other people got to use it too. And he built brilliant software, and just a great guy. But the point of that is, I used the software, and I was not a professor, nor one of his students, or a student in finance, but didn't use it in finance. So it turned out there were a lot more people using his stuff than he ever dreamed of. Like he just didn't even care that we were using it, which is kind of what motivated the group in Chicago to build additional tools, because he was very much focused on teaching, whereas we were focused on the practical side. Like we really needed things to work. We needed them to be fast, and it's kind of a different mandate. But so yeah, I guess the last or the middle two there, that kind of you're your first user. Oh, I have one here. You're your first user, and you are your most important user. So don't let other people's kind of opinions or directions influence you. It's another thing T-Telm told me when I went out to Switzerland with him, and kind of nicely took me on a boat ride and walked around. He was and I had built a package that was competing directly with his. And so he could have tried to sink me on the boat, but he instead said, don't let anybody tell you to not do this. He's like, this is something you've made, and stick with it, and if you believe in it, just do it. So, and this is XDS, which ended up actually kind of crushing his software, which he was fully on board with. Like he didn't care, because again, it was not what he cared about. It hurt me, actually, because I really like this stuff. But that XDS thing is funny, because this also goes against it. A lot of my talk, you'll notice some internal inconsistencies. That's actually just me. But this time series thing. So when I wrote the time series class, it came out of QuantMod. And the reason it came out of QuantMod was I needed a way for other people who used all these other time series classes, like TS, MTS, all the stuff in base R, IRTS, ITS, FTS, or a zillion of these things. And all of them did something slightly different, and a lot of them didn't follow our convention, so they all kind of bothered me a tiny bit. But none of them were very fast. And then Zoo came about, and Zoo was great. So everyone used Zoo. But Zoo didn't have time. Zoo was just ordered observations, Xylus's ordered observations, which I'm now a co-author of or contributor to. But it was funny at the time because like it didn't solve my problem because I needed to know it was a time series object coming in. So I needed to be able to test it and write all this stuff. So I decided this XTS class would be able to take anything you threw at it, turn it into this internal object that I could deal with, and then plot them and do whatever, and then give you back magically the one that you gave it at the beginning. So like it didn't impact your workflow at all. Okay, I work with a IRTS object, make a pretty plot, comes out as an IRTS object, and nobody's the wiser what happens inside. So the idea was other packages could use this internally to make a bigger user base, better software, and that is actually what happened, kind of amazingly again. I surprised myself here a lot. So so this thing is, my friend Adam, who's I think hiding behind a pole over there, is pointed this out. It's this. It happens to be lifted from Wikipedia, but it's this Chesterton's fence thing, which is I guess fairly well known in tech spaces. But again, I told you before, I'm not a tech person per se. But basically, it's like if you there's this weird fence in the middle of nowhere. But the idea is, just because you don't see a reason for something being there or being the way it is, doesn't mean there isn't a reason. So, and the idea that I take from that is to just sort of pay attention and really look back and see what's been done before and be careful not to wreck what's been done before. So I do believe if you're publishing something, you really need to be responsible for what was there and pay attention to API calls, pay attention to arguments, pay attention to syntax, as abusive as R syntax might be, and like camel case and dots and all that other stuff. But it's like kind of the way R is. It's got to 1 million users just like that. I'm not thinking I'm good enough to break it. So more to the point is I kind of needed to solve, or I wanted to solve, and what I think everyone probably also wants to solve is this like, what's missing? What do you need extra? But don't mess with the stuff that's there. Do the least possible. And that's A, because I'm lazy, but also because you do the least amount of damage if you're only touching a tiny bit of stuff. And the last three here are, they repeat because they're so important to me, is that no one should have to learn how to use your software. So Zoo inherited from TS. TS was is a regular time series, and irregular time series is kind of the norm in the rest of the world, unless you're dealing with like econ data at a like macro level. So we needed an irregular time series. Zoo solved that, but Zoo solved it in such a way that it preserved the way you constructed things almost exactly. Even if the arguments were named in silly ways, that was just the right way to do it. So you didn't have to learn a new way, or very, very little stuff you had to learn. And then XTS subclassed Zoo to do the same exact thing. And then the neat part is like I got to then put the stuff back into Zoo to try and make everything better and do even less damage, I guess, on my side. It's not perfect. There are many things people can call me out on that I screwed up. Many, many things. But that's kind of the motivation. This is also not a great picture, but I think this is the Second Continental Congress. And it's also unattributed because there is no attribution to it. The idea here is like, I don't want to tell anyone what to do. And I also don't want to build anything. So I don't like writing code. So one of the things was like get as much that I needed to solve by myself, and try and get everyone else to operate within the same constraints or bounds. We're doing pretty good. And for that to work, I kind of broke it down where it's like the Unix way. And I think, and as much as Jared says I'm not on board with Tidyverse, I think, and I'm not, but but the fitting together, the stickers are super cute, by the way. But the sticking together of pieces, little pieces, is great. Like that is what you want, and it's awesome because then you get like the takeaway there is you get contributors who otherwise would have to go through this horrible channel of pushing or asking you, sending you a diff in the old days, and I don't like managing that. So the fact that you can build something, somebody can use it there, somebody contribute it to something else is great. And that is, I think Tidyverse does that, like knocks it out of the park. And again, the stickers are awesome. The two next ones, I actually couldn't, again, resolve myself to come up with a simple solution here. But you definitely want to minimize dependencies, certainly on core packages. So like XDS tries to be as minimally invasive. It only requires Zoo because it subclasses Zoo. It relies on Zoo for a lot of the methods that it uses. It just does, the one thing XDS does that is different, kind of, is it requires your index to be time, where Zoo could be anything. It could be the names of animals, and they just happen to be ordered by whatever you want, and they could be in any order you want. And it'll always work. You can merge them together like a cat times a cat. You'll get the cat answer, the cat product. But it's not a time series, so I needed a time series. But it only takes in Zoo, nothing else. The second part of that is obviously if you want people to use it, you need reverse dependencies. So I encourage people to use it, but also not, like I tried to do as least harm as possible at the core level. So when somebody is using it, they're not seeing 5 million packages roll into the screen and clobbering each other and all of that stuff, which turns out to be horrible. And it's even worse when you're doing something in production. Like data exploration is fine. You can swear all you want for that. But when you've got something running for 2 years and generating a signal and you're trading on something, and maybe not in R, but in any kind of language, you don't want to go, I don't ever want to go back and fix it. And if something else, some new version of whatever XDS came out and broke something, that can't happen. Like that, it just can't happen. So try and minimize dependencies. And then yeah, the community thing goes back to the ecosystem. It's like you just want more people on board. So build a nice place to hang out effectively, and you'll get contributors. And the last part, I feel like I'm super ahead of schedule. The last part is to be helpful. I thought this was funny, which I was actually going to make a QR code myself. But and the be helpful is super duper easy. Users really matter. Even if you're not building something that you expect other people to use, kind of like detail them, but they do matter. People are great contributors, whether in highlighting that you screwed something up in the documentation or that you actually implemented it incorrectly. But they are great, and you always need to be respectful of them because they're you, effectively. Back to that first picture with the stars, like there are a lot of people just like you. It's basically you complaining, and you just don't have the bandwidth to do all the complaining, so you rely on other people to complain. But it works out really well. I like the idea to stay focused on one thing, so I kind of do the time series stuff fairly well at this point. But I don't want to go too far out there with something new. Though I will say, since I have an audience, there's an mmap package that I wrote that is awesome. It's basically like, it does what FF and Big Memory do, which Dave Kane's somewhere around here. I don't know but it's very, very low level. It's like if you know C code or if you know anything about mmap, it lets you do this, but again, in the least invasive way possible. So you can use it and not have all these crazy dependencies. It doesn't do anything except for make your life easier, I think. But try it out. Yell at me if it doesn't work. And then documentation. I will stress documentation. I like handwritten documentation. I love the fact that R made this process where you get this horrible stubbed out RD file, and you have to go back in and manually fix it. Because it makes you think about it, or at least makes me think about what I want to convey. And conveying it gets you, again, more users, more people using it correctly, and then more contributors, and more users, and more contributors, and then people showing up to conferences. It just becomes this cool crowd that you get to hang out with every year or twice a year. You run into them randomly in different places. And it's probably not all about documentation, but it gets people on board. It helps build this successful whatever that is. And then the next point is users are really important, but they also have their own agenda, and they don't own your project. So don't really cater to them. Like you can take guidance, but not all their suggestions are great. 37 Signals, I don't know if anybody knows Basecamp, but they're out of Chicago, but they're a very big project management firm. But they're not big. They're like 30 people. And the guys who run it are fantastic. But they really have always stressed building small. Is that my time? Damn it. OK. Anyway, I'll leave it to go. But that is really it. It's really, be humble, talk a lot about stuff, maybe over time, and just have fun. Like, make the stuff you like, have fun with it, and try and broadcast it and get more people on board. I think that's it.